if you'd like to learn how to equip a tool in your player's left hand, keep watching and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Welcome to Roblox Snippets. Alright, to achieve equipping a sword or a tool in your left hand, there's a few steps, or a couple of steps in it. One is that we need to create an animation to actually do that, because currently Roblox only caters to equip things in the right hand, which means your right arm comes up when it's equipped. So we're going to need to create that little animation, which is not too hard. And we will also need to write a script. And so there's a couple of things to do. The first thing we'll do though is get ourselves a sword tool to work with. So come up to the Home tab and then to Toolbox. And as you can see, I've already got models. I've searched in the marketplace and brought up sword. So you can pick whatever sword you want to use. I'm just going to use the first one that comes up here. So we want to insert it into the workspace. So left click on workspace and then select it. Now this one has scripts in it. Don't worry about that. We're going to delete them if yours has scripts in them. So click on OK. If this comes up and says insert tool, it's talking about putting it into the starter pack, and just say no and it should fall into the workspace. You can close this window now and we will expand our classic sword. And we're going to delete any scripts that we find inside of it. So the first one will be, we'll get rid of this thumbnail camera, the sword script that is in here, and this mouse icon. And if we expand this, you can also get rid of the sounds that are in here and the touch interest. So all we're really left with is the tool item up here with this little symbol and the handle inside of it. Okay, so that's the first item that we need. Next, we're going to we'll just put a couple of things together and then we'll get into it. The next thing we need is an avatar for us to create an animation with. So if you come up to the avatar tab at the top and over to rig builder, right, we're going to use an R15 rig. It's a little bit more flexible, although what we're doing is very simple. So R15 rig though, and you can pick any of these, male or female. You can use your own avatar here. However, I'm just going to use this mesh avatar down here and add it into the workspace. Alright, so his name is Rig, and I don't like seeing the name on mine, so if you want to get rid of the name, just drop down, select the humanoid inside the rig, and then down in the display, in the properties, you'll find this display distance type with the viewer. Click on that and select none and we'll get rid of his name. And at the moment Mr. Rig is being a bit rude with his back to us, so click on the rig and then hit Command or Control R to spin him around a couple of times so he's facing us. Now we have a sword tool in the workspace and we have a rig to work with. Now the sword itself, as a tool, we're going to now that it has no scripts inside of it, we want to right click on it and copy it. Then come down to our starter pack, left click on that and right click and paste in there. So this will go straight into our player's backpack for us to equip and unequip. Now this sword up here that we've got left in the workspace, we're using this a bit like a prop to go with this rig. So we don't need it to be a tool. So what you can do is take the handle, so left click on that and drag it up into the workspace. Then where you have this sword tool, right click on that and we're going to delete that. So find the part called handle and we can just call this dummy sword. Right, so it's just going to be a prop that we're going to move over and use to do the animation with this rig. Alright, so if you've got both of those things ready to go, then we're ready to move on and we'll create the animation to get started with. Okay, before we start making the animation, let's just play our project. And you remember we put a sword into the backpack. So our player will load in, and I'm a ninja, getting a sword is very appropriate. And we have this dummy sword over here. So now if you run over that, nothing should happen because it's just a prop. Okay. Now if we click on our sword, this is the normal standard animation that happens when you equip a sword. Okay, so if we put it away and we bring it out, you'll see the sword goes into his hand, and if we zoom in a little bit, we don't have the sophistication of having fingers wrap around it, etc. It's just placed inside of the hand. Now, I just wanted to show you this because it's important before we create the animation to understand how and where this is working. If we come up to the workspace, all right, you'll find your character. So expand your character out, and inside you will find this animate script. Now, if you expand that, you'll find all of the animations that your character can do by default when you start the game. And scrolling down the bottom, you'll find 3 different ones: tool lunge, tool none, and tool slash. If you look at what's happening on the screen now, this is called tool none. And if we expand it, the tool none animation object, which is this one, is what he's doing here. So he's simply got his arm out in front of him, straight like this, and the sword has been added to it. That's the animation. So not really anything exciting. And then if we put it away, okay, that animation stops, and if we bring it up, it continues again. So closing up that animate, let's now look at what's happening with the sword. So the sword gets added to our character when it is equipped. And if I unequip this now, it disappears out of our character. And if we look down in our backpack, which is under our players, so you'll need to expand that, find your character in the backpack, classic sword goes back in the backpack. And when we equip it again, it disappears out of the backpack and goes back into our character. So what else is happening? Now, it's in his right hand. Okay, so let's scroll down and find right hand. If we expand right hand, you will see all of these different things in here. Now, the one that is important to us at the moment is this one here. And if you go ahead and click on this thing called right grip, scroll down and look at the properties, and you'll notice it is a weld. Now, this gets created each time that the sword or tool is equipped. So if I go ahead now and unequip, you'll see that that right grip disappears. And then if we equip again, the right grip reappears. So what we're effectively going to do today is make use of the information where these welds are created and how, parenting it instead of to the right hand to the left hand, and making it appear over here in this hand, and making this animation come up. Okay, so hopefully that explanation is not wasted on you, but that's what we're going through and going to do today. So let's stop that there, and we will get set up to create our new tool none in the left hand. Okay, so the first step here is click on your rig and hit F, and that should bring in a nice tight focus on your rig. And the next thing we want to do is bring this dummy sword here. Now, if it's on a funny angle like this, all right, you can come down into its properties here, and the orientation, if you come into here and change the orientation to be zeros, all right, in the C frame for this one, then we can rotate or move this. It should go flat like this, or perhaps straight up and down, but not on a weird angle. And what we're going to do is bring it over to, I'll just turn off these so we'll get fine movement. So we want to bring it over to his left hand, sorry. So left hand, so normally you would equip a tool in your right hand, but we're going to bring it over and put it in his left hand. So come over this way, so rotate around. So we probably want to rotate this 90 degrees at the moment because he's sort of holding it the wrong way. If we click on rotate here and change this to be 90, it'll be the blue one, and we just rotate it around like this. So just take your time with this. There's no need. Pause the video and get it to sit correctly for you. I'm going to move my sword back a little bit in his hand so it's sitting with the end of it sort of out the back there. And if we just rotate around, it looks pretty good, okay, where I've got it. So you want it to be something like that. Once you have that, the next thing we're going to do is actually weld the sword to his left hand. So these steps are fairly important. I need you to expand your rig, and I'd like you to firstly find his left hand and left click on it so it's selected. Then what we're going to do is come into the workspace, and I'd like you to hold down Command or Control and then left click on the sword. So it's important that you click on the left hand first, then the sword, and you should find they are both blue like that. Once you have that, come up to Model in the top and over to Constraints, and this little box, if you click on this drop down here, it's got to create here, but click on the little drop down and we'll make sure that we choose Weld. Alright, and it should weld that part to the hand. So if you expand this now, you should see a weld. Did it actually weld? Yeah, there it is. The weld constraint is in the dummy sword. Now we can test that out and make sure that that's working by going into our animation editor now. So when we do that, we don't need this window open, or this one, so you can close the output, properties and Explorer window, and we'll come up to the Avatar tab and click on Animation Editor. When you do that, you'll have this couple of windows down the bottom. You then want to come up to your rig, and when you move your mouse over it, you'll get a blue box around it like this. Shows that that is good to go. So left click on that. It'll ask for the name. So we're going to call this, or make it something that makes sense. So left hand tool animation. Alright, it's a bit lengthy, but that sort of very clearly describes what we're doing. And click create, and you will have this happen. Now what we can do, we'll make use of the inverse kinetics. So over here on the left there's an IK button. I'd like you to go ahead and left click on that, and you'll have this window show up with this big enable IK button. Go ahead and left click on that, and now we have all the parts in the model to work with. Now all we're really doing is moving his arm from where it is, so his left arm, where it is, so that it comes straight up in front of him, and to do that we will rotate his upper left arm. So what I'd like you to do is find that over here in, where is it, upper left arm, there it is, and we might not use the setting of 90 degrees, you could, but, and just rotate it up. Now if your welders work correctly, the sword will work with it. So rotate it around till it looks natural. So you can even just bring it to there if you like, or however you want your animation to look at the end. So I'm just going to bring mine up to be around that 90 degree mark, like so. Alright, now we're going to put on loop here and hit play, and nothing has happened. Alright, so if you want it to, I mean, you can just have it go from there to there and have it looping, and that is what will happen. So when you're running around, it will snap into this position and just have the one keyframe here. Now if I was to delete this keyframe down the bottom, we go back to this. Let's say that you wanted to well, let's just leave it how it was. So we'll stick with the upper arm. I don't want to make things more complicated. It's not about the animation so much. So once again we'll rotate this back up to 90 degrees, like so. We do want to have looping turned on, so make sure this little button here with the circle on it is turned on. The next thing we need to do is come over to the three dots, left click, and firstly click on Save Animation, then click on the three dots again and you'll see Set Animation Priority, and I'd like you to choose Idle. Alright, so find Idle in the list and left click on it. Once you've done that, we can come up to Publish to Roblox. So left click on Publish to Roblox. Now mine's been doing this funny thing where this is all out of whack, and you just need to resize the window slightly and it should come back to normal if that happens to you. It's coming up with the title here, and you can put a description in here if you wish, and as long as you have that up with this name in it, that makes sense because this is going into your account, then you can go ahead and click on submit. Okay, you should get this success window come up here. Now what we'll do is initially click on up here. You'll see you can copy this with this little notepad, so left click there and it'll say ID copy, and then click on close. Now we're effectively finished our animation, so come up and turn off the animation editor, and we're going to bring up the Explorer and Properties window and just zip up our rig and sword there for a moment. And in the workspace, left click on workspace and click on the plus next to it and start typing the word animation. Now you'll see that this little sort of light bulb thing with animation comes up. Left click on that so that it adds into the workspace. And when you click on it, this is an animation object, and you'll find an ID down the bottom. I'd like you to left click next to that and then Control or Command V and paste that number in that we just copied and pasted from our animation and hit enter. And Roblox Studio will format it correctly, ready to use. Let's change the name of this object to be new tool none for now, and just leave it sitting in the workspace. Okay, so nothing will happen just yet, but we've got this here and we've got the number. Now if for some reason you didn't copy that correctly, the way to go about to find it is to come up to home and then click on toolbox and click on inventory, which is the things that you own or you have made. Then click on the drop down and find my animations, and your most recent animation that you just created will appear in the top left. You can then right click on that and copy the asset ID, which will be the same as the one we just did over here. Right, so if we're up to that stage, then we are good to go to give this a bit of a test on our own character and just see how that might look. So we'll do that next. So we're going to add or replace the standard tool none animation on our character with the one that we just created. So the quickest and easiest way to do that is I'd like you to go ahead and play the game. So the idea is here we want to load up our standard character. Alright, so here he is in the workspace. Come up to the workspace and expand your character and find this animate script we talked about earlier. So left click on it. If you expand it, it's got all of our animations inside of it. What I'd like you to do is, while the game is running with this script, right click and come up and copy the script, and once you've copied it, go ahead and stop the game running. Right, now we're going to scroll down to and find starter player and expand that, and left click on starter character scripts, then right click and paste into. So you should have this animate script inside of your starter character scripts. We can now expand this, and we're going to replace, if we scroll down here, this tool none animation here. So come into the tool none animation, and we're going to get rid of this animation and replace it with our new one. So up the top in the workspace where we had our new ID, come into there and you can left click in it and then use Command or Control C to copy whatever's in that box, animation ID. Come down to our tool none down the bottom and left click in there and then delete whatever's in there first, right click and paste. Okay, and you should have your number appear in the box. So we'll just click off that and make sure that it's come up correctly. Alright, it's got the asset ID in there. Now if that has not come up with the HTTP and it's just got the asset ID, it might be best if, just to make sure that this works correctly, we'll get it from our toolbox. So click on toolbox and inventory, my animations, right click and copy the asset ID as I showed you just before, and then in the box paste the number in and then hit enter, and it looks like it has come up exactly the same, but I just wanted to check. So with that done, you can close that up there and we can save this. So what's going to happen is when we run the game now, this script will replace the stock or standard script that gets loaded with any character, and any animations you've changed will now be applied to your character when you play. So let's play. Okay, so I'm in the game, and if I come down to equip my sword, there we go. Okay, we have our left hand has come up. However, the sword is still being equipped to the right hand, but the animation has worked correctly. Alright, it's come up straight out in front of us, although his arm seems to be a little bit out to the left. So if you wanted to play around with your animation, you could do that, but for the purposes of demonstration, this will work fine. So now what we have to do is we're going to write a script that will, when this is triggered by equipping this sword, we're going to move the sword from where it would normally be equipped up to this hand over here. Alright, so we can go ahead and stop the game running, and we will now work on that. Now, we don't need our Mr. Rig anymore in here, but you don't have to delete him. Just drag him down and put him into replicated storage or somewhere else. And we also don't need our dummy sword, so we can drag him into replicated storage. And this animation object up here, you can drag that in there too, or you can delete it. Now you know how to find it in the toolbox. For this next part, we'll bring up the output window so we can check if we get any errors. And we're going to add our script into our actual sword. So come down to the starter pack and find the classic sword in here, and click on the tool itself, so not the handle, and click on the plus, and we're going to add a local script. So make sure that it is a local script and not a script, and if you don't see it in the list, start typing local into the search box until it pops up. Add that in, and we will change the name of this to be equip tool left hand, just to be super clear about what this is going to do. And we can get rid of the print hello world in there, and we're good to go. Now, usually when you write a script, it just does its job. However, this particular script is reliant upon the fact that we have an animation to work with for the left hand. So for that reason, at the top here, make a comment to say this script requires a custom left hand animation, and then you can make another one below. Replace tool none anim with custom with your own animation. Okay, so while you remember what's going on right now, if you were to come back later and apply this to another tool, you might go, well, why doesn't it work and stuff? And remember, we had to do that animation first for the left hand in order for this to work. Okay, so hope that makes sense. All right, now let's get on to working with tools. So if you haven't worked with tools before, they have some special methods attached to them which we'll set up to begin with. The first one, we'll create a variable for the tool itself, which will be script.parent. Remember that the script, the local script, is attached to this tool object, so that is the special item here. The thing that you see on the screen, which is the sword, actually called handle, that is the handle. The tool is a special item, it's invisible. Beneath this, we're going to create two different functions. First one will be a local function, function, and this will be tool unequip with a set of brackets and drop down, and then below that we'll create another function, local function tool equip. So we've got two empty functions, and beneath both of these functions, how we'll call these, we say tool, which is the special item, dot equipped. So this is an event that happens. So when you click the button to equip the sword or bring it out, it will call, all right, and we do that by connecting, and we want to tool equip. So like this. Now note that there is no parentheses, it's just the name up here. And right below this, as you can probably guess, we want to say now unequipped. So this is when we put the sword away. We want to connect tool unequip. Alright, and so these will be triggered when you equip or unequip the sword. Alright, and you can check this if you wish by adding a couple of print statements in here. So if we put in here print, and you can say tool or put tool away, and down here print equip tool. And if you want to give it a run, let's see if that actually works. So remember, it's connected to this tool in here. So if we left click on it, you'll see we equip the tool, even though we haven't done it correctly here. And if I left click it, we put the tool away. So you can see that is working correctly. So we'll stop that there. And you can leave that in there if you wish, or comment it out. I'm going to get rid of it so it doesn't confuse us. And we can move on. So the first one we're going to look at is the tool equipped function down here. Inside of this function, the first thing we want to do is get a hold of the character. So remember that this is a local script, and when a tool is equipped, if you remember we played earlier, the tool is moved from the player's backpack into the character themselves. So because of that, we can use that information to say script.parent, which is the tool, and then the parent of the tool will be the character. Now this will only work inside this function. If you were to put this line up here, it would error, because when you unequip, we put it back into our backpack, which is in the player. So they're two very important things to distinguish when you're working with tools. Alright, now that we have got our character, we want to look for their left hand. So where we originally have been putting or equipping tools. So local left hand, and we're going to look in our character, and we're going to find first child left hand. So the spelling is very important here, so make sure it is a capital L and a capital H like this. And once we find that, we're also going to find the handle of the sword that we put in here. So if you we're looking for this name here, so if you've just left it as classic sword, then that's what we're going to look for. If you changed it to just sword, then obviously we need to find that. So but we want the handle, so we're going to say handle equals, and we'll look in the character again, and this time we're going to say wait for child, and inside it's already come up with the item that we're going to wait for, and we're going to left click on that, so the name of the sword. However, we want to get inside of that, oops, so, and get this handle part here. So at the end we can simply put dot handle, and it should pop up like that. I'll just close that for now so you can see. Alright, now that we have this, remember, and we're in a process here, so you remember that we have equipped the sword, and in this case the character's right hand, alright, is going to receive that grip part that we talked about before. And I might just run it again just to show you. You don't have to do this, but let's run, and we shouldn't get any errors here. If I expand our character and we come down to our right hand, remember when we equip this, we get this grip part here. So that is what we're going to have a look for now, because we're going to get a hold of this and then delete it out of the character. So I'll stop that, and let's write the line to do that. So just move down a line there. So what we want to do is just look in our character and find first child right hand. So once we've got their right hand, we then want to wait for child, because this may or may not be there yet, because it's being created, and we are after the right grip. Okay, so that is the weld that gets created, and when it finds that, we're going to add a colon at the end and destroy it. So we're going to get rid of it out of the character's hand. So it should. Now that we've destroyed that weld in the right grip, we need to create a new weld. So right below this, we will create a weld. So we'll simply call it weld, local weld equals instance.new, and we are creating a weld. Now we'll add some properties for the weld. So weld.name, and this one is going to be called our left grip, as opposed to our right grip. And now there's a couple of properties of a weld. So the first one is C0. Right, if I just bring that up again so you can see C0 and look at the helper text, determines how the offset point is attached to the joint or instance. Okay, so I won't go into it, however we need to create this, and initially we're going to simply set a C frame. So we'll create a C frame.new, and we're going to give it no settings, so just all zeros. We're going to require some adjustment of our tool after we're finished, but this will get things working initially. And we need to do one for C1 as well, and it will be the same thing. So cframe.new and 0, 0, 0. Then we'll say weld.part0, right, will equal the left hand. So we're making use of this variable we created up here, and we're attaching it to the left hand. And then weld.part1 will equal the handle. Okay, so that's being attached to the sword handle. So joining those two things together, and then we will parent the weld. So weld.parent will be to the left hand. So after we've done that, we want the animation to actually play. So where we need to load that onto our humanoid and then play it. So we'll create a variable for the humanoid, which will be equal to character, and then grab its humanoid. And you shouldn't have to wait for child here. This should just run because we're in the character. Now the animation track that will load onto the humanoid, however, we'll create a variable up the top here. So local anim track, and we'll set that to be nil. We want to simply wipe it clean each time it's used so that we don't end up with the same animation playing over and over again. So down here, once we've got our humanoid, we'll set the animation track, we'll load that onto the humanoid. So the way we do that is we say humanoid load animation, and now we need to locate where we put that animation object. So if you remember, in our character, so we type character dot, we found an animate script, so animate with a capital, animate, can't type today, alright, and inside of that, there was that big long list, remember, of all of the animations, and we want tool none. So pay attention to the capitalization. This is a capital A, this is all lowercase, dot, and the object that we want to play is the tool, so capital none, anim, and that's the object that is holding our current animation that we created. And once it's loaded onto the humanoid, then we want to play the track. So anim track, capital play, and that will get our tool animation to play. Now when the player unequips the tool, however, up the top here we just need to write a little bit of code to stop that playing. So if anim track and then dot is playing, then now there's no brackets at the end of this. This is a Boolean value, so it's either true or false. Either the track is playing or it's not playing. So in the case that it is playing and this is true, then we want to firstly stop the track, so anim stop, and once we've stopped it, then we will set it back to nil. And that way each time the player unequips the tool, it gets wiped back to nil, and then we load it on again to play the next time. Alright, now we're ready to test. Now don't be disappointed if things don't work perfectly the first time. We need to make a couple of adjustments. So firstly, come up and click on File and Save and click on Play. Alright, I'm all loaded in, so if I come down and click on my sword, it has popped up almost correctly, but it's upside down. Alright, now yours might also do the same thing, and the way to fix that is we need to make a couple of adjustments. So while the game is running, if you come up to View and open up your Explorer and Properties window, and we're going to find our character in the workspace, and then find their left hand, and find the left grip that we just created with our code. And I'll bring up the properties up a bit here. Now you remember we created these weld parts here and we set these to 0. So now we need to rotate or move these around a bit in order to get this to position correctly. So initially we'll just work with the CO and see if we can get things looking pretty good up here first. So if we expand the orientation, come down to Z for a start, and let's try putting in 90 in the Z. Now what I'm doing here is rotating the sword around. You'll see that it went from facing sort of with these parts going that way to this way, which is correct. Now if yours is slightly different to mine or whatever sword, then you'll need to play around with the rotation of yours to get it correct as well. So at the moment that looks pretty good in terms of being rotated the correct way. Now let's say we come up to X and we want to try and rotate 180 degrees, which looks pretty good to me. That spun the sword around, and you'll notice it made a few changes to what's going on up here. Alright, so it made this -90. Now the position, now that we've got the rotation correct, we want the position to be moved, so we want to move the sword up a little bit. Let's try doing that with our Y here, and let's put in a 1 for a start and see what happens. Alright, so that's not the right, it moved backwards for us, so it's not the Y. Let's try the Z. If I put in a 1, it moved down, so let's change this to be -1, and it's almost correct. So if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see that it's almost come up. So if I added -0.1, maybe even 0.2 there, that's looking pretty good. Maybe 3. Alright, maybe we could go 2.5 if you wanted to be specific. And it's sitting pretty nicely. Now you can play with these others to move it slightly left or right, but these numbers are what you need to pay attention to now to put into our code. So while the game is running, because you're going to lose these numbers most likely, let's have a look at our CO weld, and we put in here, the only change that we've made in here is to the Z of -1.25. So let's come into that and change the last number to -1.25. And our orientation down the bottom here, alright, now this orientation that's going on here, we're going to need to add code in here, but as for the position, this is all good. So with our Y, if we come back and just have a look here, if I change this back to just be 0 instead of -0, nothing changes, so we're all good. So the two things we need to remember is Y 180 and Z -90 in CO. So let's make a note of that in here. We'll just put a comment here. So X well, we can put it in brackets like we would, and we can say 0, 180, minus 90. So that's the change that we made, and we've only changed this position up here. So let's go ahead and stop. Hopefully this will save, this negative 1.25. Alright, that has stayed in there, and we are now able to make a couple of changes here, and I'll show you how to do that now by rotating the C-frames. So what I'll do is move this out of the way, just up above. So this is a C-frame, and we want to change its orientation. Now there's a special way to do that by multiplying at the end. This is just for our CO weld, and we're going to say C-frame dot angles, and then inside of here we're going to put these numbers that we just came up with. However, you need to put them in a certain way. So I'll just close this so you can see. The first one is 0. Now for the next number we'll put in math dot rad, so it's converting it to radians, 180, and then move outside and comma, and it was negative 90, so we'll put in math dot rad and negative 90 in here. So they are the only changes that we are making to make it work. Now yours might be slightly different, so just pay attention to that. But let's click on File and Save and Play. Alright, I'm all loaded in the game, and if I click on this now, there we go. I have my sword equipping correctly into the left hand, and I can run around with it like crazy. Alright, it's come up with some crazy run with that. I don't know why. I do, because I'd loaded on my own character animation earlier. So, and if I unequip that, then I just go back to running normally. If I bring this up and I run, alright, looks like a madman coming at you left-handed. So look, I really hope you enjoyed that and you find it useful, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. If you found this video useful, subscribe now. For more information about my online courses, go to mrbrendanross.com.